You might know the name Bill Gates, but do you truly know the full story behind the legend?
Hmm.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the show that takes your sources, all that info out there, and pulls out the most important nuggets of knowledge and insight for you.
Think of it as your shortcut to being genuinely well-informed.
Exactly. And today we're embarking on our 5th Deep Dive Legends journey.
That's right. We are pulling back the curtain on a figure whose impact, on technology, on global philanthropy, it's just immense. Bill Gates.
Our mission for this deep dive, we want to trace his historical timeline, really explore those key milestones that, led to his extraordinary success.
And we're aiming to go beyond just the headlines. We want to uncover the obsession, the sacrifice, and the genius that really define his legend.
It's a fascinating journey, definitely. There's just so much to unpack about a life that has constantly redefined, well, everything. What it means to build, to succeed, and then ultimately to give back.
So much.
Let's get into it.
Okay, so to understand the colossal figure Bill Gates became, we absolutely have to start at the beginning, right? His formative years.
Right.
And what often surprises people is that his parents, initially, they actually envisioned a career in law for him, not tech.
Law. Wow, that's quite a detour from, the guy who built Microsoft.
Isn't it?
But what's really striking from our sources is the environment he grew up in. It wasn't just about, getting good grades.
No, not all.
It fostered this intense, almost relentless competitive spirit. A family friend even said it didn't matter whether it was hearts or pickleball or swimming to the dock.
There was always a reward for winning, and there was always a penalty for losing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that quote, too. It really paints a picture.
It does. This constant push for victory, right from childhood. You could argue it laid the psychological groundwork for his sometimes uncompromising business strategies later on.
Yeah.
And maybe even his fixer mentality in philanthropy.
That competitive drive, definitely.
Yeah.
And it met this pivotal moment when Gates was just 13.
Lakeside Prep School.
Exactly. He enrolled there, and thanks to the school's Mothers Club, who, get this, used rummage sale money, they bought a teletype Model 33 ASR terminal.
Which, for anyone listening who might not know, that was basically an early computer workstation, like a typewriter hooked up to a remote computer.
Pretty rudimentary by today's standards, yeah. But it was their gateway, connecting them to a General Electric, a GE mainframe.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Gates was immediately hooked, just captivated.
Totally. So much so that he was actually excused from his math classes just so he could spend more time programming the GE system in BASIC.
Imagine that. And his very first program, a tic-tac-toe game, designed to play against the machine.
Yeah, and you have to think about the impact of seeing that software code execute perfectly, flawlessly on his, developing mind back then.
Absolutely. That fascination, it didn't take long to evolve into something more.
Right. Because the Mothers Club funds, well, they obviously ran out eventually.
Predictably, yeah.
But Gates and his friends Paul Allen, Rick Weiland, and his best friend Kent Evans, they weren't stopped by that.
No way. They found another way to get computer time. How?
They basically exploited bugs in a computer center corporation, or CCC PDP-10 operating system.
Okay, so the PDP-10, that was a pretty powerful early mainframe. And they found vulnerabilities.
Yeah, which gave them unauthorized access. Of course, this led to them getting banned for the whole summer.
Banned. For being too good at finding flaws. But their response to the ban, this is classic early Gates, isn't it?
Totally. Early entrepreneurial spirit right there. They formed the Lakeside Programmers Club. The goal, make money from coding.
And their deal with CCC was just brilliant.
It really was. They agreed to find bugs in CCC software and, in return, more free computer time.
And Gates himself was incredibly dedicated. Our sources say he'd go down to CCC's offices, spend hours just studying source code, Fortran, Lisp, even machine language.
Yeah, it really speaks volumes about that early obsession, that drive he had to just master these systems.
It absolutely does. That period, though, it was foundational, but also tragically marked by loss.
Yeah, Kent Evans, his friend and really his first business partner, he was killed in a mountain climbing accident.
Gates apparently called it one of the saddest days of his life.
Understandably.
Right.
And that's when Paul Allen stepped in, helped him finish the class scheduling system they were working on for Lakeside.
Cementing another crucial partnership.
Yeah.
One that would, literally change the world pretty soon after.
Yeah.
So, okay, this intense obsession with code, the problem solving, the competition, even from his school days. It clearly laid the groundwork.
Definitely.
Moving into the next phase, you see this programmer's mind really transition into building an empire, Microsoft.
And early on, he wasn't just the CEO figurehead. He was still an active software developer, especially on the company's programming language
Yeah,
products.
our sources say he was still writing code that actually shipped,
Yeah,
like in the final product, as late as 1989.
that's pretty deep into Microsoft's journey. It shows that connection to the tech side remains strong.
There's that great quote from Jerry Pournelle, the tech writer, back in '85, about Microsoft Excel,
Oh, yeah, I remember that. He said Gates liked Excel not just for the money, but...
because it's a neat hack.
Yeah.
It highlights that genuine love for the craft, right? Seeing software as this elegant solution, not just a product line.
Exactly. That elegance, that technical appreciation.
And that love for software, combined with that fierce competitive spirit we talked about, well, it propelled Microsoft to dominance incredibly quickly.
You really have to think about it. They went from this small startup to a global giant, seizing key opportunities.
The MS-DOS deal with IBM was the big one, wasn't it? That put their operating system on basically every PC.
Huge. And then came Windows, which, I mean, completely changed the game for user experience, made computing accessible, mainstream.
And Microsoft Office, of course.
Yeah.
Just became the standard everywhere for productivity.
None of that was accidental, though. It was aggressive strategy, rapid development, and yeah, that relentless drive for market share.
But that relentless drive, it wasn't always smooth sailing. It came with its share of challenges and a lot of criticism.
Definitely. In the late 90s, Microsoft under Gates faced major scrutiny. The business tactics were widely seen as anti-competitive.
Like bundling Internet Explorer with Windows, that was the big one in the antitrust case.
Exactly. And it led to numerous court rulings against the company. These aren't just like footnotes in the story.
No, they really illustrate that tension, don't they, between game-changing innovation and corporate power.
Yeah, it forces you to ask, what's the cost of that kind of disruptive success sometimes? And how does that shape the legacy?
Good question. And those complexities, they definitely continue as we look at the post-Microsoft phase of his life, where he completely redefined success again, pivoting to global philanthropy on a scale we'd never really seen before.
Right. March 2020, he announced he was leaving his board positions, Berkshire Hathaway and Microsoft.
To dedicate himself full-time to philanthropy.
A massive shift. Though it's probably worth noting, as the Wall Street Journal reported in May 2021, that this step down happened before Microsoft's board finished an investigation into an alleged inappropriate relationship.
Right, that detail adds some context to the timing of his full transition away from the corporate world.
Yeah, moving fully into this new focus on global challenges.
And that focus is channeled mainly through the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which is just one of the largest private foundations anywhere globally.
Its scope is incredible. Global health development, global growth and opportunity, and also U.S. education. Huge areas.
What really stands out from our sources is his intense focus on climate change and global energy access. He sees them as deeply linked critical issues.
Absolutely. He's a massive advocate for huge investment, both government and private sector, in R&D, research and development.
To make clean energy cheaper, more accessible everywhere.
There was that powerful quote from him back in 2011. He said something like,
"If you gave me the choice between picking the next 10 presidents or ensuring that energy is environmentally friendly and a quarter as costly, I'd pick the energy thing."
wow. That really tells you where his priorities lie, doesn't it? Crystal clear.
It absolutely does. He really believes this rapid energy transition is possible, but it has to be driven by innovation.
And that needs, in his view, more government funding plus more risky private investment. Things like advanced nuclear, grid storage, solar fuels, the big bets.
And he's put his money where his mouth is. We've seen concrete initiatives like Mission Innovation. That was getting 20 governments to double their clean energy R&D.
And breakthrough energy, too. That coalition of investors funding those high-risk clean energy startups, he committed $1 billion of his own money to that.
It's not just talk and funding either. Real projects. In June 2021, his company, TerraPower, teamed up with Warren Buffett's PacifiCorp.
Right, to build the first sodium nuclear reactor in Wyoming. That's a tangible step towards next-gen energy.
He also played a big role, kind of behind the scenes, advocating for the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022.
Yeah, he called it the single most important piece of climate legislation in American history in a New York Times essay. Shows his deep policy engagement.
And beyond energy, the foundation's tackled global health in some really unique ways. Sanitation, for instance.
Ah, yes, the Reinvent the Toilet Challenge, trying to develop safe, affordable sanitation for billions who lack it.
And who could forget 2014? when he drank water produced from human feces.
Right, from the Omni processor machine to raise awareness. He even went on Jimmy Fallon with it.
Definitely memorable. It underscores his commitment to practical, maybe sometimes unconventional solutions, gets people talking.
For sure. And these aren't just, standard check-writing philanthropy efforts.
No. Our sources also mention him partnering with Roger Federer for those Match for Africa tennis cuts.
Seattle in 2017, San Jose in 2018, raising millions for kids in Africa, using his platform in different ways.
And kind of underpinning all of this is his public pledge, right? To donate virtually all of his massive fortune to the foundation.
Yeah. I mean, this is someone who has clearly, fundamentally shifted his life's focus. From building a tech empire to tackling the world's biggest, most complex problems.
But this incredible transition, inspiring as it is, also brings us into what we could call the complexities of a legend. We need to look beyond the headlines, understand the full picture, including the controversies.
Well, yeah. You're right. You can't really ignore them for a full picture. For instance, investigative journalist Tim Schwab has accused Gates of using his foundation's funding to sort of influence media coverage of him, to protect his image.
And there was that Politico expose critical of NGO leadership during the COVID pandemic. It raised questions about Gates having such a prominent voice despite, not having formal medical credentials.
Right. And during the pandemic itself, Gates and his foundation became, well, targets for a lot of conspiracy theories.
So many. They were spreading like wildfire online. Accusations of trying to depopulate the world, harmful vaccines, microchipping people, just wild stuff.
Our sources say Gates has responded publicly, remarking that sometimes people prefer a simple explanation like an evil person over complex biology.
And he said he genuinely doesn't get why anyone would think he wants to track them with microchips.
One area that drew particular scrutiny, though, mentioned in our sources, was his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein.
Right. This reportedly started in 2011, which was after Epstein's conviction for procuring a child for prostitution.
Sources indicate Gates visited Epstein many times. Apparently, his wife Melinda expressed discomfort about it.
And the purpose of the meetings, reportedly discussing the Gates Foundation and philanthropy.
Gates himself did reflect on it later. He said, and I quote, "It was a huge mistake to spend time with him, to give him the credibility of being there."
There were also reports of Gates traveling on Epstein's private jet. And then in 2023, reports surfaced that Epstein had threatened to expose an alleged affair Gates had.
Yeah. These details from the sources, they're sensitive, obviously, but they're part of the public record and necessary for understanding the scrutiny that comes with that level of influence.
Absolutely. We have to report them impartially.
Yeah.
Yet, despite these significant controversies and the questions they raise, his impact has also received huge global recognition.
Undeniably. He was named a builder and titan in Time magazine's 100 Most Important People of the 20th Century. That's a massive acknowledgement.
And Time Person of the Year in 2005. Shared with Bono and Melinda Gates, they call them the Good Samaritans.
He also received India's Padma Bhushan Award in 2015, again with Melinda French Gates, and the Jefferson Awards for Public Service, specifically for benefiting the disadvantaged.
So these accolades really highlight the global acknowledgement of his philanthropic work, even amidst the other complexities.
So, okay, we've traced this incredible arc, from childhood games and coding obsession to building Microsoft, then pivoting his entire life towards global challenges.
Right.
But let's circle back for a minute. Back to his roots in programming and this idea of talent. There's a really provocative quote from Gates that kicked up a lot of debate.
Oh, yeah. What was it?
He said something like, "After the first 3 or 4 years, it's pretty cast in concrete whether you're a good programmer or not."
Wow. Okay, that's a pretty bold statement, almost deterministic.
Exactly. And you can imagine it got incredibly diverse reactions from programmers, especially on places like Reddit's Learn Programming forum.
I bet. What'd they say?
Well, a lot of skepticism, naturally. Like, should a super successful businessman, even Bill Gates, be the final authority on how people learn or the psychology of skill? The feeling was talent isn't just this fixed thing you either have or don't after a few years.
Makes sense. Was there a counterargument?
Oh, yeah. A strong one arguing that continuous improvement is absolutely possible. It takes, conscious effort, time, and the desire to learn. Becoming great is a journey, not just a 3-4 year test.
I think it's about persistence.
Another interesting take was that maybe Gates wasn't talking purely about raw technical skill, but more about passion and work ethic.
How so?
The idea being, maybe he meant the difference between someone who's hardworking, always iterating, always learning, versus someone who just kind of tries to stay under the radar. So maybe it was about intrinsic drive, not a hard skill ceiling.
That puts a different spin on it. What else came up?
Well, this idea that initial talent might win you a hackathon, maybe, but real professional quality programming, that comes from dealing with the messy stuff, the smelly code.
Refactoring, fixing things
Right.
properly.
Developing good attitudes, like
Yeah.
not taking shortcuts, doing things the right way, even if nobody sees it immediately. It's about craftsmanship.
And that ties into maintainable code, readable code, right? That
Yeah.
was probably emphasized too.
Hugely. In a pro setting, it's not just does it work now,
Yeah.
it's can someone else understand this? Can I understand this in 6 months? That
Right.
needs discipline beyond just like raw coding speed.
Very true. What about learning itself, especially for self-taught coders?
Crucial point. The role of mentorship came up, but also the skill of learning how to learn. If you don't have a guide, figuring out how to improve, how to debug your own thinking, that's a skill in itself.
A meta skill almost.
Yeah. But then there was also the counterpoint about innate strengths. Someone used a basketball analogy. Like, you can love basketball, practice every day, but if you're, say, 5'5", you're probably not making the NBA. So effort is key, but recognizing your natural aptitudes matters too, especially at the very highest levels.
Finding your niche, perhaps.
Maybe. And one last sentiment that really resonated in that community discussion was this idea that the real heroes are the people behind in the dark making the tech.
The unsung heroes.
Yeah, implying that deep technical skill doesn't always mean public fame or fortune. It's a nod to the huge collective effort behind technology.
So wrapping this all up for you, the listener, you've just taken a deep dive into the truly extraordinary life of Bill Gates.
From that early, intense fascination with code, founding a tech empire that changed the world.
To that profound pivot towards global philanthropy. We've seen the obsession, the genius, but also the complexities and controversies that inevitably come with such a massive public impact.
His journey, really, it's a testament to this relentless pursuit of groundbreaking solutions, whether those solutions were in software or corporate strategy or tackling huge global challenges like climate and disease.
And as we think about those different views on what makes a good programmer and Gates' own evolution from tech titan to global problem solver, it does make you wonder, doesn't it?
What does this deep dive suggest about the nature of expertise, of success itself? Is it purely innate genius that sets these legendary figures apart?
Or is it more about a relentless, constantly evolving dedication, a dedication to solving problems, combined with this unending capacity to learn and adapt no matter what field you're in?
Something to think about as you navigate your own interests and passions.